Woodhouse Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram is bringing you more power, capability, and savings with the full lineup of new Ram trucks during the Black Friday sales event going on all month long. Lease a 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Cab Bighorn for $429 per month. Visit our 2 convenient metro locations in Blair or Bellevue or online anytime. Lease for 42 months, 10,000 miles per year with approved credit. Tax, title, license extra. $2,500 down plus first payment and $299 doc fee to its signing. Example stock number BC230242. Offer expires 11/30/2023. See dealer for details.
Hey, it's Storyworthy. Today on the show, comedy writer Mike Sachs talks about life and a memory from high school that won't go away.
So he invited me to a party where I had grown up, and I was going to go, but the last minute didn't. Came into work the next day, and the manager pulled me aside and said, "Did you hear about Dougie?" I said, "No." He said he was at a party, and the host of the party was treating his girlfriend badly, so Doug went into this guy's bedroom with 2 of his friends and went to confront this guy, and the guy pulled out a shotgun and shot him all in the back. So it was a triple murder, and it just haunted me because I was almost at this party.
Today on the show, writer Mike Sachs talks about his life and a memory from high school that won't go away. Stay close.
Hey, it's Mike Sachs, and you are listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show or a new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. I hope you guys had a chance to listen to the show last week with musician Richard Marx. Richard is a really interesting person, as well as extremely talented, as you know. And last week he talked about spending time with Paul Newman, who he kept running into time and time again, which was really funny. And he's just a great guy. Go back, you guys. Listen to Richard Marx talking about Paul Newman last week, but not today. Stick with me now, because today I'm here with another very interesting person. His name is Mike Sachs, and he's a writer, like a big-time writer. Like, when you look at your credits, Mike, I don't have to tell you, but man, oh man, you basically have written for everybody in the United States. Maybe in the world, but you know, the names we all know, like Vanity Fair and Esquire, GQ, the New Yorker, Time, the New York Times, the Washington Post, McSweeney's, and on and on. It's very impressive, your list, Mike Sachs, and I'm so happy you're here to talk with me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that nice introduction. That was very sweet.
Now, I just read an article that you wrote, which really made me laugh, and this article was interesting to me, called Things America is Throwing Out While Spring Cleaning. And what was interesting is that you wrote it alongside 5 other writers. And so like the names are Scott Jacobson, Todd Levin, Jason Reeder, Ted Travelstead. So let me ask you now, who came up with the concept of this?
Well, that's a group that we've written together for quite a while now. We wrote a book about 15 years ago called Our Bodies, Our Junk. And it's a group, a very talented group. Jason Roeder came up with the famous headline about the school shootings for The Onion that's posted every time someone is unfortunately killed in a school shooting. He's written for a number of books, McSweeney's, and then Scott, Daily Show, and Todd, Conan, and Ted, many, many places. So a really talented group that we've written together. And the original impetus was just to get a writing room together, but not for television, for the printed page. But we work really well together, and that specific idea was Jason Roeder's, and we'll throw out some ideas, and whoever, you know, if the majority likes the idea, then we'll just move forward. But we work really well together, and hopefully the piece ends up better for the collaborative aspect of it. And I think also we write together, we write alone so often that it's so solitary, but to be able to write with others is really a lot more fun in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. Now here, I just want to give some examples. Things America is throwing out while spring cleaning. Knotted hemp bracelet on the Statue of Liberty's wrist. That's very funny. Tesla autopilot's 7 beer setting. That's very funny also. That one person without a podcast. Be gone. a very large plastic bucket full of spare cryptocurrency. These are all things that America is throwing out while spring cleaning. Tell me what some of yours were. Do you remember?
Well, the bucket that you just mentioned and the one person without a podcast, be gone.
All the
it's funny.
I like all the stray frisbees in the Grand Canyon.
No, I think that was Scott Jacobson.
Hilarious.
I mean, it's fun because we come together pretty well and we have different styles, but it meshes pretty well. We originally started doing these lists for Radar magazine a number of years ago, and they were 100 jokes. So we come out with about 300 total, and they would pick about 100, and it would be things like least effective opening lines or worst things to say during a job interview,
right.
worst Secret Santa gifts, and that sort of thing. And it's just fun to do. And luckily enough, New Yorker is amenable to these silly type of lists.
Yeah, it's just hilarious. It's super fun. It reads very funny, and you can tell everybody's having a good time, participating in it. And then recently, you wrote a piece in the New Yorker about Natalie Merchant. And Mike Sachs, you made me go through a wormhole of Natalie Merchant that I sat in front of the computer like 5 hours. Looking at her career. I am such a fan of Natalie Merchant, and I'm so glad you talked with her. Now, did you get to pick the people you speak with, or did somebody say, go talk to Natalie Merchant?
Yes. I mean, I'm very lucky. I never got into writing to be a journalist. I got into it to be a comedy writer, and I just sort of fell into interviewing. I never took a journalism course. I never interviewed anyone. In fact, the first person I interviewed was Noah Baumbach, the director, and this was for Vanity Fair, and I did it, and I put it online, and people were starting to get in touch with me, and I thought they were making fun of me because this was the first interview I've ever done, but they genuinely seemed to like it. So from that point, it was sort of a selfish thing. I reached out to various writers, comedy writers, especially the older ones, to pick their brains, and ended up doing 2 books. But for New Yorker, it's really anyone I find interesting. And in the past, it's been Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and Mike Judge, and now Natalie Merchant. Is going to be Elton John and Peter Gabriel and some others. So I'm very lucky.
Really? You're really going to talk to Peter Gabriel?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm setting that up. His PR person expressed interest, and I'm hoping he will acquiesce to that. But I'm very lucky in the sense that I can pick anyone I want.
Oh, Jesus, you are. That's an unbelievable thing to be able to say. I mean, sometimes I have guests that I really want on this show, and I go through, oh my gosh, emails back and forth for 2-3 months, and then it doesn't happen anyway. Or they'll say right back in 3 months, then right back in 3 more months, right back in 3 months, and it's like, is it ever going to happen? It's really great that you can choose anybody you want, but then again, we look at your career, you look at your past, you look at like the 15 books you've written or whatever it is, and you've achieved a body of work that stands for itself. So I would think that if Peter Gabriel, if they say, this guy wants to talk to you, and he says, who? And they say, Mike Sachs. Now, if he doesn't know you, fair enough, but as soon as he looks for you, or if he gets to MikeSachs.com and you see your resume, then why wouldn't Peter Gabriel say, oh yeah, this guy has his shit together?
Well, I go after people who don't really give many interviews. I interviewed a writer for The Simpsons, John Swartzwelder, who has never been interviewed.
Really?
And the reason for that is I just find it interesting to interview those who have not been giving interviews over the years, who might have something to say, whose work intrigues me. But I have not, I don't think it's my name these people are saying yes to. They're saying yes to the New Yorker name.
Oh,
when I reached out to various people for my first 2 books, I had a very difficult time getting anyone to say yes. And I don't mind a no. It's just the people who never got back to me that I found was really quite common. And that was typical with younger writers. The older comedy writers those in their 70s, 80s, and in a few cases their 90s, always got back to me right away. And it was always them that got back to me, not their PR people.
Yeah, but you know why that is because I do this all the time. I'm always writing to people. The older people, I'm not saying you're old. I mean, look, I'm old, but I mean, we're all old. You know, when I got to LA, I was 31. I was old. Do you know what I mean? Then and now, Jesus. But the point is,
I don't think 31 is old at all. Why would you say that?
In LA. Here's the point. Here's what I'm trying to say. The older people are used to actual correspondence with a pen and paper. So now they're on email and they're saying, "Dear Mike, comma, warmly," they respond or whatever. So they're like writing proper letters. So it's like, the old times, but in a good way.
Oh, totally. I mean, I really don't mind it. No, John Waters got back to me, phoned me and said, "Listen, I can't do the interview and here's why." And I thought, that is a classy move.
That is classy.
What I don't like is just never hearing back.
Yeah.
But with the older writers like Al Jaffe, who just passed away at 102,
wow.
They all get back to you, and it's just a sign of respect. So there's quite a few people who did not get back to me for the first two books. But really with New Yorker, when you lead off with New Yorker, that's really doing most of the work for you, I find. So people at the very least will get back to you one way or another.
Yeah, you're already vetted in a way, I would imagine. But I guess my point is what's frustrating via email or anything, social media, is you don't even know if they got the letter or they got the request. You're just thinking, I don't even know if they got it.
Well, they usually do get it, but it's just a rudeness, I think. And I don't know if it's generational, but my parents always taught me to always get back, whether you want to do it or not. I mean, just show them a sign of respect by getting back. But really, it was really quite problematic with the writers in their 20s. There's just no response, and I just don't understand that. And it was quite difficult, the first two books. Which is really the reason I'm not doing the third book, is that it just took so much effort. Not only to do the interviews, these are long-form Playboy length, Paris Review length interviews.
Yeah.
But to get them just to say yes, and then to get them to sit for hours or even weeks via email to do these long-form interviews, it's not an easy thing, and they're not used to it. It's not really done as much anymore. It's usually shorter interviews now online rather than the long-form interviews that I really prefer.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, that's like reading a Vanity Fair interview or Rolling Stone. The in-depth stuff is the best. And that's why I was so happy when I read the Natalie Merchant stuff, because she's just been such a part of my life ever since I was maybe, 18, 19. And she started in Jamestown, New York. And when 10,000 Maniacs started, she was like 16, 17.
Yeah, she was a kid.
And
right.
She's still so vibrant and so beautiful. I really adore her. So thank you.
I love her. Well, that was me just wanting to talk to her because I grew up loving her music, and I love her music now. And she's one of those artists that I really appreciate. And they're typically artists who just do what they want, how they want. And they're not going after sales. They're not going after huge awards. They're not going after roles in Hollywood. They're just doing what they want, how they want, and they're forging their own paths. And they're just they're keeping on down that path, and they're not stopping. And when you do talk to someone as lovely as Natalie, that their incredible singing voice and her talent for songwriting, you know that, but you don't know what she's like as a person. But when you talk to someone like that, and she's as much of a mensch as she was, and is just a wonderful person, is such a great thing to experience. Now, on the other hand, there are people I've talked with who were not mensches, who were not nice. That's the other side of the coin. But thankfully, that is not as common as dealing with people who are very successful and also very nice. There's typically a reason why someone, especially as a writer, is successful. They're usually open to new experiences, and they're open to meeting new people, and they're usually a bit of a mensch. They're not jerks.
Yeah, okay, names, Sax, names.
Who are nice?
No, who are not nice.
Well, there's been a few. I mean, some are not nice because they're shy, and I totally get that. There was one particular case, Ann Bates, She was an original writer for National Lampoon and then Saturday Night Live. She was the girlfriend of Michael O'Donoghue, who's an infamous comedy writer. He's beloved, who's now since passed away. But it was one of those cases that as soon as it happened, I knew this was going to be a disaster. And this is after like 30 hours of preparation. So I don't know what they're going to be like before I call them, but I can usually tell pretty instantly. And she was very aggressive and very on guard for whatever reason, very defensive.
And she just didn't want to be there.
Right. Well, I had made it clear. I said, listen, this is going to be hopefully a 15-page interview, which means quite a bit of talking. She took that to mean a 15-minute interview on the phone.
Oh, no way. She did not.
Yeah. So after maybe 10, 15 minutes, she started. And this has never happened. I don't like to be rude to people, but at a certain point, I don't need to deal with it. This was my book. I didn't need her in the book necessarily. I thought she would be interesting. If she's going to give me a hard time and be rude, I don't need that in my life. And I really rather not have to spend time with rude people anymore. I just don't. I did that enough growing up. I don't need to do it anymore.
No, absolutely. But how did you get out of it, or what happened?
I said, well, thank you very much for your time. This is obviously not what you were expecting. And at that point, she started to backtrack and said, well, you know what? It's fine. I don't need it. I really don't need it.
No, you don't.
I don't. This is not a homework assignment where if I don't get you, I'm going to get an F.
Yeah. Who was that person? Ann Mead?
No, Bates. Beatts. Now, if you've seen 30 Rock, there is Carrie Fisher played a character based on Ann Bates, where she was just an insane writer from the previous incarnation of the original show that they were featuring. So that was based on her. She was notoriously difficult to deal with. And that's really the main exception. I mean, we're talking about Al Jaffe, whom I interviewed when he was a sprightly man in his 80s. He just passed away at 102. Lived an incredible life. Escaped Lithuania. His mom died in the Holocaust. Just an incredibly, just a genius, really. And beyond that, just the nicest guy. So humble, so modest.
Great. Isn't that great?
I mean,
he created Mad Magazine, correct?
Well, no. He was part of the original gang of idiots, Harvey Kurtzman. All these Jewish kids who grew up post-Holocaust in New York City basically rewrote comedy. And very punk aesthetic, very adult type of humor for kids. And that's one of the reasons why comedy writers adore Mad magazines. They were never talked down to.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, when you're a kid and you're not talked down to humor-wise, you never forget that.
Yeah.
And it influenced huge amounts of comedy writers, including Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, Conan O'Brien, just go down the list.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to backtrack 1 second. When Natalie Merchant left 10,000 Maniacs, that was one of the pure moves of like her artistry. She just was not, apparently, as I read, you wrote and I read, she wasn't getting the respect, that she deserved. I mean, she's the band. She is 10,000 Maniacs. And so she left to do her own solo stuff. Then she comes out with Tiger Lily, which was brilliant. So
one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was just a great example of somebody, leaving their comfort zone.
Well, totally, and that's I've seen that across the board with people. They have the chutzpah to, if something isn't working, most people, and I include myself in this, tend to just stick around. These people are the people who really do make it, are willing to take a chance. And you really are taking a chance. I mean, she was leaving a very popular band. She was frustrated with the creativity by group mentality. And she said, I don't need this. And it's a very brave move to do. You look back now, Natalie Merchant's solo artist, seems inevitable, but it was anything but.
Mm-hmm.
And she got a lot of flack for that, leaving the band. She got a lot of criticism from reviewers for Tiger Lily. Including some very negative reviews in Rolling Stone.
Is that right? Is that right?
She got I think a 1.5 star out of 4 or 5 by a reporter who said that it was music for the Prozac Nation.
Wow. Wow.
And that really hurt her. I mean, she's still hurt by that. I mean, what's interesting, too, is talking to these artists. Sometimes they don't know the effect they have on people because their lives are a bit isolated. She lives upstate New York. She took time off to raise a daughter who's now 19, and she was somewhat remote, I suppose. And it's always interesting to hear the surprise from either writers or artists at the effect their work has had on people. I think they tend to forget that. It's a very difficult business, a very lonely business. And I think Natalie Merchant, in some ways, may not have known how much her work meant to me, but also to a lot of my friends. Oh. And like most artists, they concentrate on the negative reviews, which is a shame. So in that sense alone, just to be able to tell her how much her work meant to me and to my friends, meant a lot. But also, she's headed out on tour now. I mean, she hasn't gone out on tour since COVID. So to see reactions of people is a lot different than a lot of downloads on Spotify.
Sure. Oh my gosh. Natalie Merchant would have a literal mosh pit in front of her of girls who wanted to be her. Want to be her and are dancing like her, and she's the flippin' best. All right, let's go back to your wish list for interviewing, because I want somebody to get a hold of Van Morrison. What about that?
Oh, see, okay, now that's an interesting instance. It's like Eric Clapton. There are certain people who are not interviewed who are on wish lists, but what I have found is just because someone is on a wish list and you get them, that doesn't mean it's going to be a good thing. Yeah. There are certain people who don't give interviews for a reason, and they're not good interview subjects, and Van Morrison would be one of those cases. He's just a notorious ass, and he's a genius. But he is one of the biggest jerks out there. I know.
Now, my buddy David Wilde. Do you know David Wilde?
I know his name through writing.
Well, he was sent from Rolling Stone magazine because he wrote for them for years, and he was sent to interview Van on like 3 different occasions. I mean, like 3 different occurrences over the years. But let's say the first occurrence, he would. He would go to the show. Let's say he'd go to London. He'd go to the show, and he's supposed to meet Van Morrison backstage. And then Van Morrison would see him and run away. Then David would fly to Sydney, Australia to see Van Morrison and to interview him. And the same thing, Van would see him and run away. Like he does not want to. But it was all planned ahead of time. I mean, it's not like David was just chasing something, unplanned.
Right. See, I would have not done it more than once. Life is too short.
But wait a second. You say that now because you've accomplished so much. But would you have said that 30 years ago?
Well, 30 years ago, I would have been about 12. But I think now I would. Here's the thing. I just don't want to deal with assholes. And I don't want the interview subject to treat me like they're doing me a favor, like I'm one of their... workers or one of their hired help. I don't want that. And maybe it's my ego, but I want people to be interested in being there and want to be there.
Yeah, now, there agree. Are certain people 100%.
There are certain people who people always ask me, "Hey, did you get Woody Allen? Did you get Albert Brooks? Did you get Steve Martin? Did you get Christopher Guest?" You know what? No, and I don't want them because they're not good interview subjects. They don't want to be interviewed, and I am not their teacher or tutor where I have to interview these people. I have no interest. And if they're not going to give me what I want, it's a back and forth. They need to give me what I need, and I have to treat them with respect. And if they're not willing to do that, I really feel that life is way too short, and I don't need to talk to Woody Allen. Or just say someone else like Paul McCartney, who's very nice, but he has given 1 million interviews. What is he going to tell me that he hasn't given everyone else? I just don't need it.
Right, let him alone.
I don't need to meet him.
Right, I agree. That's so, I love everything you just said, because I think this is like my 780th podcast with just this show, and I've done other shows as well. So, I mean, I've been podcasting for, over almost 13 years, Mike. And by the way, I've made hundreds of dollars.
Free figure.
But no, I know what you're saying. And I have another show called My Life in 3 Songs, which I talk to comedians about the 3 songs in their life that have impacted them. And it's a wonderful show. It's is specifically is exclusively on Spotify because we listen to the song and then we talk about the song, listen to the song, etc. Right. So now I'm only trying to get like the best comedians I can find, right? So I'm trying to be very, curate this thing in a certain way. And I've asked a couple of people. Most everybody says yes, 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 yes. And then sometimes I'll get publicists and they'll say, oh no, this will be too much. It's too much. Then I have to ask them to think of 3 songs. It's too much. And I'm like, no, people want to come on. Like people want to share. I would never say you have to do something. I'm not paying you, No. So yeah, I totally understand.
Right, it's like throwing a party and then a guest is there who doesn't want to be there. Like, it, they know it. Yeah. What are you doing here?
We're all adults. Yeah, could we please be adults here?
Well, the problem is a lot of these people are difficult you can't get to them directly. You have to go through their marketing or PR person. And as you know, PR people, if their client isn't publicizing something very specific, if they're just going to talk about their favorite songs, they're not going to be interested in having their client on that show.
Right. What's the point? Yeah. What's the point for them? And that's their job. So, okay, we're all doing our jobs. Now, listen, you also have a podcast called Doing It with Mike Sachs. And, first of all, it's so well produced. Congratulations.
Oh, well, that is all Rob Schulte. Rob Schulte is a guy I met. He got in touch with me from Kansas. He was working in a coffee shop. And 10 years later, he is now a huge podcasting producing star. He's really as good as it gets. He just worked with Conan O'Brien and Rob Lowe. But that is all him. I have no technical ability at all. It's all Rob Schulte.
Wow. Well, that guy, he really does do a great job because, the way he weaves the music in and out, it reminds me a little bit of Mike Reese's podcast and, the podcast or the Sunday morning program that was always on by Harry Shearer.
Oh, I love that show. Yeah, the found audio. I love that.
Great stuff. But your show is in that vein. It's very smart. It's very funny. No, I'm a podcast person, so I listen to a lot of this. You guys can find Doing It with Mike Sachs over there anywhere you find your podcasts. I want to go back to another one of the items that America is throwing out from spring cleaning. Another item they're throwing out is, do we really need 2 shining seas?
That's Scott Jacobson, yeah.
That is so funny. I laughed so hard. I love laughing out loud too.
Oh, I love that you laugh. Well, that's the thing,
to
with these
or writing. I mean, laughing out loud to when you're reading something and you start laughing. That's truly a funny thing.
It's a very insular thing, very quiet thing. We write these alone at home, send it to the other person, and they'll hopefully like it, the other writers. But we never see people's reaction. It's not like we're on the subway and see people reading these lists or stories. It's not like going to a movie or to a theater where you can see live reaction. Now, I don't do any readings, but I'm friendly with David Sedaris, and he'll occasionally ask me to open for him.
Wow.
And, I have done readings where no one has shown up. Those are most of my own readings. So to go from that to opening for 2,000 people, it's a very surreal experience, but also an incredible experience because you see reactions instantly, and I never, ever get to do that writing for the written page. It just doesn't happen. And it's really a magical experience.
Well, that goes back to the artist not knowing the impact, right? But, Stephen King has made an impact, right? I mean, we all know that. But I guess you're talking more about editorial stuff or interviews. But you must know because you see the readership, right? And you do get comments.
Not really, though. I get comments, but it's not like you're there to see their expression. I've only seen one person reading one of my books, and this was on a subway. And it was just like one stop, and then he got up and got off, so I didn't see any laughing or anything. But it's a very lonely life. I'm a solitary person. I like being alone. But I have to say that when you write, especially comedy for the page, it is a very strange thing because there's typically no reaction. and you sort of lose touch. Does this work? Does this not work? Is what I'm doing even worth doing? I mean, why am I doing this?
Dude,
so
I spin around in my desk chair every day, at least 4 times, saying those words.
Right. Why am I doing this? But then you get one email and it's all worth it. But it can be very solitary. But you mentioned Stephen King. I mean, he was the only writer I ever wrote to as a kid asking for his autograph. He never got back to me, but that doesn't matter. I think he's a genius. He's a special case, but most authors, 99.9%, will go out and maybe have 5 people show up at readings, which is why I don't do them anymore.
Hang on, Mike. Hang on. I work for a bookstore in Los Angeles, Skylight
Which
Books.
one?
Skylight, and it's the largest independently owned bookstore, and I host readings. I mean, I guess I know I'm in LA, but I mean, I host events all the time, and there's 100 people often.
Well,
or maybe
okay.
100 is not enough. I don't know what you mean.
100? Who are these authors? Because I've toured and I came out to LA, and there's maybe 10 people.
Really?
15. I mean, I think it depends on the author. David Sedaris sells out a lot of places, and I think some authors really work at it. But to send out authors across the country, it's just, I find it a bit of a throwback and very old-fashioned.
Well, no, that's true. And during the pandemic, we did all of our events online, and we found we had guests from Sweden and Australia, all over the world. So that was a whole different...
Oh, online is fine.
We didn't know. Yeah, it was so exciting. It ended up being great. But I guess for me, because it's my job, and I've been doing it so long, but also because we always have such a great time. If there's 40 people there, we have a great time. And if there's 100 people there, it's a great time. Just because it's the, like you said, it's a sense of live entertainment and the give and take. And people are always happy to be there.
Well, so this place is called Skylight. Yeah, I've heard of that. I played another place, and there's maybe 15 people or so. But yeah, I mean, if 100 people showed up, I'd be in heaven. But it's just, it doesn't seem to happen. And there's a lot of chatter online now from writers about how no one showed up or 2 people showed up. It's just very disheartening.
No good. Yeah, that's no good. I hear you. Do you feel like you're just writing every day, or do you make yourself write every day?
Well, I have to write every day because I have OCD and anxiety and depression. And if I don't write every day, then I really sink, and I sink very quickly. So, I've had OCD since I was in 6th grade. And there's an energy to it that makes you do certain things, whether it's turning on the light in a certain way, wash your hands, avoid germs, whatever it is. But what I have found is interviewing all these writers, I would say 75 at least % of the comedy writers that I've interviewed have OCD. And by training yourself to sort of funnel this energy in a certain direction, you can use it to your advantage. And I've tried to do that, where if I don't write every day, I would get, I get anxious and depressed, where in the past, if I didn't turn on a light in a certain way, I would get anxious and depressed. So it's become actually a boon to my writing. It's not a fun way to live, but by having this sort of energy to have to produce every day, it has been beneficial.
It's a brilliant outlet. It's such a wonderful outlet for you, and you're so good at it.
Well, thank you. It's a healthy outlet. I mean, I have a lot of friends who have OCD, and they haven't not lucky enough to be able to funnel it in a positive direction. And it can really ruin your life. I had it as a kid. I didn't know what it was. I just sort of fell into creativity as an outlet. And I just consider myself lucky, because if I don't write every day, I really do get very, very depressed. And to avoid that depression, in the past, there's been alcohol or exercise or writing. So I've just tried to get rid of the alcohol aspect of it and just to continue writing and also exercising every day. Because if I'm not, I'm an absolute mess.
Yeah, I'm like that with exercise. I have to get outside and stretch. I play tennis and stuff, but or run. Sometimes I just have to run just to get my energy out. Yeah, I just have to run. Do you write longhand or do you type?
No, I've always typed. Typing.
Do you have hand problems?
I do. I have carpal tunnel.
Yeah, I have hand problems too. It sucks.
It does suck. There's a very specific point in my wrist that has been affected by it. But it also has to. Well, it's all also has to do with how I'm standing. I have a stand-up desk, which I think helps now rather than sitting down. But I write differently by typing, and I'm unable to write. Each piece I write will go through 30 different versions sometimes, and by handwriting that, I just don't have the energy to do that. So I write differently by typing rather than longhand.
Right. But okay, so I have hand problems as well, and I have to get these steroid shots right into my palm, which, that's pleasant. But that's the only way, because otherwise I get this terrible trigger finger. I have it really bad in one of my hands right now. But anyway, I get these steroid shots and it hurts terribly, but I have to do it. But the doctor keeps saying, Christine, you should be using the dictation setting.
No, so I see. He's not a writer because you don't.
No, he's a doctor.
Right. I don't think that by writing, typing for me is writing, and when you talk, it's a different form of communication. It's not writing to be read; it's writing to be heard. And typing for me is the only way I can type out something for people to specifically read on the page.
I totally understand, because that's how you capture the thoughts.
Absolutely, and if you learn by typing as a young writing student, that is how you should do it. I mean, it's like saying to a violinist, well, you should change your hand position or you should sit differently. They do it the way they do it for a reason. Right. And, it's part of the disadvantage of being a writer. I mean, there's certainly more dangerous jobs, but quite a few writers I know have carpal tunnel. It's definitely a problem.
Yeah. What's problematic about stuff like that is it's a tiny problem, but it's a huge fucking problem.
Right, and it's not up there with having to work in a coal mine or something like that. But
that's what I mean.
But what's interesting too is my father was a dentist, and he was specialized in root canals. And by doing the same movement every day for 30, 40 years, he came down with the same condition that I now have. So I have what he had just by repetition, by typing every day for a number of hours, which is interesting. And this is something they never teach you in writing school, at your MFA. I never got an MFA, but writing
if you did.
Professors, if you did. And there's a reason why they don't teach you is because the professors who teach writing don't have to be out there making a career at it. So they're teaching something they're not completely familiar with, how to go out there and hustle and to sell and to publish and to get an agent. And some of the side effects of writing in this case would be carpal tunnel.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking my kid did take typing in junior high school. Yeah, they did take typing, as I recall. Yeah, but what they don't teach? To me,
I should say this is the most. I tell this to people, they think I'm joking. The most important class I ever took in junior high school or high school was typing.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And we also took an accounting class, and that helped me a lot, like how to write a check and stuff like that. Not that you need to know that anymore, but I don't think they teach anything about finances.
Don't. My daughter is 13, and I have told her that instead of Algebra 2, they should teach her how to do her taxes, how to fill out a checking account, how to fill out a bill. That, to me, is more worthy than Algebra 2 or geometry, because that's real life, and that's what she'll have to do. That's what she'll have to teach herself to do, just like everyone else. And I'm not sure why that isn't taught in schools.
I know. Or just teach people about credit cards so that when they enter college at 18, they don't just go for the free T-shirt. Like they understand maybe what they're getting into.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what do you know at 17? I mean, the decisions you make. I was dropped off in the French Quarter by my parents, and there's a photo of me. Like, what the hell am I doing here? You're way too young to know what the hell's going on.
But you grew up in New Orleans, right?
No, I grew up in Virginia and D.C., and then I moved to New Orleans.
Oh, I see. You went to Tulane.
Tulane, and then lived there afterwards.
I see. Yeah. Did you like New Orleans?
I love New Orleans. I miss it. I'm going back, actually, in a few months. A friend of mine is shooting a movie down there. But I adore New Orleans. It's one of my favorite cities.
The person shooting the movie, is it Greg Cope White by chance, or the Norman Lear project?
No, it's David Dubose, who is a writer. We just co-wrote a movie together, but he's shooting his own script called Dark Well, which is a horror movie, which is amazing. But we just co-wrote a movie based on the making of the 1974 movie Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh my
we bought
gosh.
the rights from the guy who played Leatherface.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
hopefully that'll be shot, I'm hoping, down south rather than California this summer.
That would be a blast. Why does everybody shoot in New Orleans? It's the tax break or whatever?
Tax break. Yeah, tremendous tax break. This would go for Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. I mean, all these places are very smart in that they get great tax breaks to these people to come out there. And I think it's great, not only for the area, but for the creators to get out of California and to see some other areas perhaps more authentic than you might find in L.A.
Yeah. Well, and also different topography and stuff like that.
Right.
And so let me ask you a few more questions and then we'll wrap this up. Usually, by the way, I don't just talk to people like I'm talking to you, Mike, but
you're a great interviewer.
I make people tell me shit. I mean, I make people tell me stories, but you are just interesting, so interesting by yourself here.
Thank you so much. I only have one story. I've only told it once or twice. It's not a happy story, so I can save that for another time. It's a pure story. Well, I worked in a record store in Virginia and Maryland growing up, and after school I couldn't get any other job, so I went back into retail, and it was for $6-7 an hour, and I worked with a lot of people who are invisible to other people, who are just white noise, these people who work retail, who stand up for lunch, who wear name tags, and I worked with this one kid who was the nephew of one of the Washington Redskins, Jeff Bostic. This kid's name was Dougie Bostic. Sweetest kid in the world. His only dream was to teach high school gym. Everyone loved the guy. He used to give away free CDs if women came and pleasured him in the back office.
Oh, God.
So he invited me to a party. This is pre-internet. Not pre-internet. No, it's not true. But before, social media. So the word didn't even get out about this, but he invited me to a party where I had grown up, and I was going to go, but the last minute didn't. Came into work the next day, and the manager pulled me aside and said, "Did you hear about Dougie?" I said, "No." He said he was at a party, and the host of the party was treating his girlfriend badly, so Doug went into this guy's bedroom with two of his friends and went to confront this guy, and the guy pulled out a shotgun and shot them all in the back. So it was a triple murder.
Oh, my God.
The kid was rich, so he ended up doing maybe 4 years.
Oh, my God.
And this Dougie Bostic died and was murdered terribly, but because he came from blue-collar background, they just didn't care. And it just haunted me because I was almost at this party. I'm not to say I would have barged into this guy's room, but it was just a total waste, and it was a shock to see this at that age. It was really my first instance of death can come at any time for any reason, and it's just something I've never forgotten.
No,
and never really told
you?
Anyone, never told anyone the story. It's just not a happy story. But
but it's really impactful. I mean, that must have made you just stop in your tracks.
Well, I was just shocking because I loved the guy, and we would have such fun. And I was in such a rut. And, this was a record store behind a housing project, and it was just like there was no end to it. He was the one bright light for me. We just got along so well. And then I see him the night before. I came in, and then he's gone. And that really sort of was an impetus to get the hell out of there. It's like, you know what? Life is short.
Yeah, fuck this shit.
Fuck this shit. I don't need it. Goodbye.
Oh, my God. And did you stay for the funeral and his family and all of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was heartbreaking because, this is pre-social media pretty much, and it was, they couldn't really get the word out. Now they would have, but it really was a feeling on their part, and correctly so, that it was because they were blue-collar and had blue-collar jobs, plumbers, electricians, jobs such as that they couldn't really fight for this kid. For his memory, and the rich, as they tend to do, came out on top. So the guy got out after about 4 years.
Did the other two guys die as well?
Yeah, it was a triple murder.
Triple murder.
Triple homicide. Yeah.
Triple murder. And how he only did 4 years.
Yeah, he got out early, and that was that. I think he changed his name and moved away. It's interesting what some of these cases. There was another case in Maryland that I was quite young, but it was a famous case where it was 4 or 5 people were murdered in one family, and it was just never talked about because it just was pre everything. This guy was home with his 3 daughters, and he hired a day worker to paint his house, and this guy killed everyone in the family and the guy who hired him. And then the mother and one of the sons were in Ocean City, Maryland, 3.5 hours away, so they had to be taken back home by the sheriff after hearing that 3 daughters and their husband had been murdered, butchered with a hammer.
What the fuck?
And it's just one of those things that I think would make an amazing book. Not necessarily about the crime, but the fact that this woman and her son then went on with life and were successful, and she remarried, and he became how does that happen? I don't know. I don't know.
Dude, you just described why everybody loves true crime.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. It's not the crime. It's the stories behind it.
It's the story. And what happens, how do people get through that when they see their loved ones just slaughtered? I mean, God, I mean, you could say that about so many instances and periods of our history. Oh, Jesus, this got dark so fast.
It really did. I didn't mean it to, but I think in everything that I write, even if it's comedy, there's always a thread of darkness, and it has to do, I think, with these stories and other stories, is that at any time, at any moment, something horrific can come, and I don't think I would have survived either of those stories if it was my son who was murdered, or my daughters who were murdered, or my nephew, or whomever. I would have been done for. And that, to me, is what I find amazing, is the strength it takes to continue on and try to be a good person and to succeed after something like this happens.
Look at our school shootings going on. I mean, how do those people go on?
I don't know. I mean, I have a daughter, and it's every parent's biggest fear. And you see these poor parents who are then attacked online, saying that your kid was never killed. It's just a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's just hell. And the fact that they can go there and continue to fight for their kids, to me, is wondrous, is heroic. And that's something I always admire.
Well, here's the thing, Mike Sachs. We need you. Boy, oh boy, do we need you. We need your humor. No, we need your humor. We need your books. We need you interviewing these cool people like Natalie Merchant. You guys go to MikeSachs.com. There's so much on that page. Your books are all on that page. One of your books is called I Am Super Pumped. Let's do this shit. The marketing of passing on the right.
Yes. Now that's an interesting story. I had hired a marketer for that book, and it was a total disaster because he didn't get it. And most book marketing is not effective. Right. So to get back at the $3,000 I paid him, I wrote a book about that. Just contains conversations I had with him while attempting to market this humor book called Passing on the Right. And it just consists of pure dialogue between me and this bozo. And hopefully shows you what not to do when you have a book out, which is hire a book PR person.
Yeah. And then you've got I have heard of this book before I talked to you, Poking a Dead Frog, Conversations with Today's Top Comedy Writers. I mean, that's just an absolute classic.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it came out...
Poking a Dead Frog. How did you come up with the title real quick?
Right. Well, that's a famous quote from E.B. White saying, you can analyze humor, but by doing so, it's like dissecting a frog. The frog will die of it, and no one's going to end up happy. So by making fun of the fact that I was dissecting comedy, I thought I would bring that over to my own side by sort of making fun of it. But that came out 10 years ago and contains interviews with Mel Brooks and all these amazing writers, some of whom have were just young at the time and have become quite successsul. So that was a fun one.
And then you have a book out called Passable in Pink.
Right. So what I do is...
What was passable in pink?
I like to write novelizations to non-existent movies. So I started doing that with the first one was called Stinker Lets Loose, which I did about 5 years ago, which is a novelization to a non-existent trucking and CB movie from the late 70s, sort of like a Burt Reynolds.
The tableau looks very Smokey and the Bandit.
Right, and for the audiobook, John Hamm played the Smokey character, and Ray Seahorn was his girlfriend, and Andy Richter and all that. So I thought, you know what, I want to do more of these, so I did 2 more, one for the 80s, one 90s. The 80s was a John Hughes takeoff called Passable in Pink, and the 90s was called Slouchers, which had to do with the Gen X type movies that came out in the 90s, making fun of that sort of thing.
Slouchers instead of, what was it called again?
Oh, God, it was Singles, Reality Bites.
No, it was, Reality Bites is the one I was thinking about. Yeah, of course. I loved that movie at the time, of course.
At the time. I'll watch it again. It doesn't hold up so well.
I bet it doesn't. And then you wrote another book called Sex, Our Bodies, Our Junk. And that's really funny.
Right. Well, that's what the guys that I wrote the New Yorker list with. We call ourselves the Pleasure Syndicate, and we wrote this fake sex manual for Random House. I guess about 15 years ago now. And
it's just it's really funny.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that was
the
a fun one to
Association
write.
for the Betterment of Sex, ABS, presents Abs presents Our Bodies, Our Junk. Very funny.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a fun one to write.
It says that you'll give the precise location of the female G-spot, the latitude and the longitude.
Right. Well, the whole joke is that there's 5 bozos writing about sex. We're a specialty association. We know absolutely fucking nothing, and we're probably all virgins.
Yeah. Hilarious. Very funny. Well, listen, Mike Sachs, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show and chatting with me today. I apologize for the technical difficulties to you, Mike, and also to the listener. Sometimes this shit just happens, and I feel like the conversation overrides the text. So I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion.
It was so fun. Thank you so much. You're a great interviewer. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. All right, you guys, one more time on behalf of the very talented Mike Sachs, my name is Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy Podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.